You're watching ACT.tv. I'm Juliana Forlano. For the second straight week, protests are continuing across the country, and they're not letting up. There's been many calls for systemic change growing louder and louder. John Nichols from The Nation is with us for a brief talk today about one politician who is promising the kind of change these protesters are asking for. Charles Booker is vying for Mitch McConnell's seat, and if he wins, not only will we be rid of McConnell, but we'll have a passionate, progressive change maker in his place. John, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
It's an honor to be with you as always.
I'm sorry we're going to have to be so brief. Can you talk about why the Charles Booker campaign is gaining so much traction? What does he stand for? Why is this important?
Charles Booker is a Kentucky state legislator who got into the Senate race early this year and was certainly not the choice of the DC insiders. They are backing another candidate pretty explicitly, Amy McGrath.
Oh yeah, I see ads for her in New York.
Everywhere, and she was defeated in a House race 2 years ago. Much more of a centrist candidate. Charles Booker is running a very progressive campaign, and he's been doing so from the start, going all over Kentucky. He comes from Louisville, but he's been in every corner of the state, especially out in the coal mining regions, building a multiracial, multi-generational campaign. Pretty fascinating project in and of itself. But then came the murder of George Floyd, and also the death of Breonna Taylor in Louisville, and a host of other developments that have created a situation where the whole country is obviously looking at and paying attention to issues that were too long neglected. Now, Charles Booker's been on the front line of talking about these issues for a long time, and in Louisville, he's been in the center of the demonstrations, talking, working with people, building coalitions, and he's brought a lot of the issues that are being raised on the streets right into the Senate debate in Kentucky. And frankly, I think it's caused a great deal of stir and a great deal of attention, not just in Kentucky, but around the country.
I'm happy to hear that. So in your recent piece, Democratic candidates should be campaigning to end toxic policing. You talked about, Booker's calls for real systemic change and not just paying lip service. And then you write that New York Senator, our guy here, Chuck Schumer, encouraged Booker's challenger, Amy McGrath, to run. Are there any establishment Democrats scared of candidates like Booker, and should they be? What happens if we get Booker and a number of Bookers in there?
Well, I don't think people should be afraid of Charles Booker. I think he's actually got the right approach. He's very blunt, very firm, very thoughtful.
I don't mean the people. I mean like Chuck Schumer. You know what I mean? Like, once we get a bunch of progressives in there, isn't that just going to kind of...
Oh, it could. Look, I mean, that you could have a real impact there. Getting there is the challenge, of course, because as we know in American politics, money flows out of Washington from where the lobbyists are into states around the country. And there is simply no question that Charles Booker's run in Kentucky is an uphill run heading toward a primary later this month. And the important thing to understand about it is he will never have the money that his opponent has. But he has sufficient money to do a statewide ad buy. He's getting a lot of media attention, and people are really impressed. The notable thing is that he's been endorsed by a number of legislators in Kentucky, Democratic legislators from all over the state, who say, look, this guy actually can connect. And the important thing is that when you talk to him, he's very conscious of the many roles that he has as a legislator, as a candidate, but also as an educator. And so when he talks about issues of police brutality and police violence, he does so in a very nuanced, very thoughtful way that I think really does build out the coalitions for systemic change. And what he's basically saying is, look, these problems are problems that we understand in the lens of the moment. But if we step back, we recognize that there are economic and social and racial injustices that have been left unaddressed for decades, centuries. And if we begin to address them, we have to find a starting point. And one of the best starting points is to address police violence. And the polls, by the way, nationally, that have come out show tremendous level of support for the demonstrations that are taking place. I think a lot of national Democrats, a lot of top level Democrats are afraid still. They're afraid of backlash. They're afraid, that somehow that it might be dangerous politically to take a stand. But what Booker is showing in Kentucky is that by taking a strong stand, by being outspoken, by going to the demonstrations, um, it, you know, people don't reject you. In fact, he's gained a lot of traction because of his embrace, I think, of a great many of these issues.
John, we're speaking with John Nichols of The Nation. Your recent piece is entitled Democratic Candidates Should Be Campaigning to End Toxic Policing. There's so much more about this that I'd like to discuss, but we're a little late in our getting our start. And so we're kind of out of time. Can you come back soon so that we can do that? Because I do believe that I'm getting mail myself saying, how can we defund the police? Then what do we do? I mean, there are people who are not progressive in the Democratic Party who don't understand what the activists are acting for and how they're, when progressives start discussing defunding the police, how is that going to play? All the spin that Fox News is getting it, that, that it's going to be pandemonium if instead of cops in the schools, we have social workers, so there's a lot to discuss here. And I hope you'll come back with us to discuss it at length. I have to go because we have Shahid Buttar, who is another really great progressive challenging a centrist, Nancy Pelosi, coming on to talk about exactly the issue that we're talking about here with Charles Booker.
I'm honored to have joined you, and I'm glad to come back at any time. There's so much more to discuss on these issues, and I've just today put up a big piece on Jamal Bowman's campaign in New York. There are so many campaigns out there that are doing it right, and it's an exciting time, frankly.
Because it is an exciting time. Do you think that Senator Bernie Sanders' run and all that he did is, to me, that's the underlying thing that freed all these people who might not have run, who are serious progressives, to run for office. Your thoughts about that?
I'll pivot it just a little bit and say I think progressives have been running for a long time. They just haven't always gotten the attention. And so one of the interesting things is that what the Sanders campaign did was show that a progressive campaign that is, straight on, speaking truth to power and doing so in an effective and important way, can get real traction. That's caused more of the media to pay attention. And yes, there are more candidates stepping up, but I don't want to diminish the fact that there are people who for generations have been banging against these walls. It's just that now I think the Sanders campaign may have put a crack in the wall, and there are others stepping up who are looking to break it right down. We could end up coming out of this year with a very different politics, and frankly, there's simply no question we need
hopefully a very different politics in the right direction. I'm sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. We're speaking with John Nichols. Find him on the Twitters at Nichols Uprising, Nichols Uprising, and find him here on Act TV. You're here all the time, almost. We're happy to have you as a recurring guest, and I look forward to extending our conversation next time. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. We bring you all kinds of progressive talkers and progressive people, and we're here, with interviews all week long. Thanks a lot, John. I appreciate it.
I'm honored to be with you. Thank you.